We have a lot to cover in today's video, including the Ottawa Senators' new owner, Michael Andlauer, being introduced, plus Nathan MacKinnon's having a special honor back in Halifax this evening. We also have some trade talk around the NHL, including the Colorado Avalanche and their search for goaltending insurance. We also have some talk out of San Jose regarding Senators Logan Couture and Thomas Hertl, and Steven Stamkos. Is there turmoil in Tampa? We've learned a lot more about this situation, and we'll discuss that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover in today's video. Let's start with the news today in Ottawa. Of course, most of you likely heard there was a video on the channel last night. For those who have seen it, we had finally confirmation that the NHL had approved the sale of the Ottawa Senators to Michael Andlauer and his partners, and it was finally a closed, done deal. After 321 days, the deal was done. He finally got the keys to the Canadian Tire Center and has full control of the franchise. They had an introductory press conference today at 11 a.m. Eastern, and he was officially introduced by Gary Bettman as the new owner of the Sens. All of his partners and many of the Sens alumni, media. It was a huge crowd. Certainly a very positive, well-received situation. Obviously, he seems like he's going to be the perfect fit for the Senators. Said all the right things. Certainly it feels like he's a passionate hockey fan. It was asked about how he got into hockey himself, and he said, hey, I grew up in Canada as a kid. Like, it was my dream as a kid as well to grow up and play hockey and win the Stanley Cup. And, now I'm hoping to do that as an owner. Obviously he grew up in the Montreal area. He's fluently bilingual, which will be huge considering how much French and English both there is in the Ottawa area, especially with Gatineau being so close to Ottawa. The Ottawa-Gatineau area certainly is huge for support for the Ottawa Senators franchise. So certainly, like I said, he said all the right things. He did introduce the new CEO and president of the Ottawa Senators, Cyril Leader, who returns to the franchise after a 5-year absence. He was one of the founding members of the Senators when they were brought back to the NHL in the early 90s. And then after working there all those years, had a falling out with former owner Eugene Melnyk, and Melnyk fired him 5 years ago. So clearly he was an advisor to Andlauer throughout this entire process, and he's officially back in the fold here. That was Andlauer's first big decision. Andlauer was asked as well about the arena situation downtown, the real estate. Said the city of Ottawa, the mayor, the NCC, everybody's very interested in getting the Senators downtown. He said from what he's heard and talked about and learned, it seems like the fan base really wants the team downtown. So they're certainly going to be looking into it and doing everything they can to make it happen. He said, obviously when you're dealing with government, things can take a long time. I wouldn't be shocked if they end up staying in Canada where they are now. It might be 5 years before a downtown arena is ready. There's lots of work to be done on it. Clearly, they're still far ways away from having anything, even getting shovels in the ground. So certainly, like I said, he said all the right things. Alumni is going to be huge. He said he was a part of, when he was part owner of the Montreal Canadiens, he was a part of the what helped bring Guy Lafleur to Montreal Canadiens, because they did have some issues at one point. He helped them be reconciled and have Guy Lafleur be a member of the organization again, and he fully intends on bringing a lot of people back. Daniel Alfredsson was confirmed and will be involved with the organization in some capacity, although he was not formally introduced today. They have not basically kind of figured out a formal official title and role and everything for him here just yet, but at least this is a done deal. The sale's closed, and like I said, I think everybody was extremely pleased. It was a big day in Ottawa, and they certainly got the right guy, passionate hockey fan who wants to win, has the resources to support the team. He even said, like, this team is not my team. He said, I think of it as the fans, the city's team. I'm just here to hopefully take good care of it. Obviously, he's already checked in and talked to the city of Belleville for the American Hockey League team, which he would now own as well. And he's just really committed to making things work and winning, which is a breath of fresh air after everything that the team has been through. And like I said, I know Eugene Melnyk had done a lot of good for Ottawa when he first came in. Eventually, I don't know if it was financially related or whatnot, but things really changed, and he was certainly ended up in I guess you could say, an alienated relationship with the fan base. And it's just a real breath of fresh air to see how rejuvenated that's become. And season tickets are at an all-time high. This team is poised to do good things on the ice now after going through a lengthy rebuild. And it's just this franchise is in good hands, stable, secure, successful for many years to come. Nathan MacKinnon had to leave training camp. I know I've seen some reporters talking yesterday how he abruptly left the training camp practice ice early. I knew what he was up to. I'm not sure. Not everybody else may not have right away, but I knew that he had a homecoming tonight to go to in Halifax with the Halifax Mooseheads. I was actually kind of hoping to go to the game myself, but unfortunately wasn't able to make it down. It's about a 4-hour drive for me. I do visit Halifax often, but unfortunately couldn't go for this evening. But his jersey's being retired for his junior team, the Halifax Mooseheads. Number 22 is what he wore in junior. It's quite an honor. To be honest, I was surprised. I even checked earlier today just to see, in case I could change my plans. There was actually still tickets available. Tickets for junior games around here are only they're not very expensive. Like for this special event, it was only $25. Obviously, Nathan MacKinnon is not only the greatest player to put on the Mooseheads jersey, but he was helped bring them their first Memorial Cup. He's obviously gone on to be Stanley Cup champion and all kinds of other accolades, being regarded as one of the top players in the world. But he's also from the local area as well, so certainly a huge role model for many of the local people. Not only, obviously, I know lots of other kids around other parts of Canada and the U.S. look up to him as well because of what he's become, with the Avalanche. But locally, he's such a legend. Him and Sidney Crosby both hailing from Cole Harbour, which is just a few minutes outside of Halifax. Like it's quite something, to get two guys to go first overall and have such successful careers, both in junior and the NHL. It's quite something. So congratulations to Nathan MacKinnon. It's quite an honor to have your number retired. You certainly are one of the best to ever do it in that franchise. Arguably the greatest player in all time. Certainly seen some of the congratulatory thank you messages that they played on the Jumbotron in the Scotiabank Center, including Sidney Crosby, his good friend, former junior teammate and now NHL teammate for the first time, Jonathan Drouin, Alex Tanguay, former coaches like Dom Ducharme, and several others as well. Lots of other teammates. So well-deserved. Just wanted to acknowledge a special honor for Nathan MacKinnon, who will be jetting back to the Avalanche to resume training camp. I'm sure. I don't know if he'll be on the ice tomorrow or not. I'm not sure if he's flying back late tonight or when exactly he'll make his return. I'm sure he'll want to miss as little time as possible to get back with the Avalanche. Now, as I mentioned, we also have some trade talk today. I want to take a look at a few things. We'll talk about Stamkos in a minute, but first I want to take a look at a couple other items. One item comes from 32 Thoughts, and this is about the Colorado Avalanche. It's a good segue from the MacKinnon discussion here. Clearly, we know the Avs. The main rumor about them right now that Chris MacFarland and Joe Sakic are looking to do for this team before the season starts, if they can, is to bring in some goaltending insurance. Unfortunately, Pavel Francouz is dealing with I would say, not too serious, but an injury that's going to keep him out of action for a while. Probably, I believe the last I had heard, it could be like a month or so. And they want another, capable NHL goaltender. There was some rumblings that they were interested in Casey DeSmith, who was with the Montreal Canadiens looking for a new home. Of course, he got traded to Vancouver, but that kind of creates another situation where they can look to. And according to Elliot Friedman on the 32 Thoughts podcast that came out today, there is some wondering if they might look to the Canucks, because now the Canucks have the same sort of issue as Montreal, except for them, they've got Thatcher Demko, Casey DeSmith, but they do have another capable goaltender who proved he can play in the NHL, but would come a lot cheaper, and that's Spencer Martin. Obviously, that's going to block Spencer Martin from getting NHL time this year, so he wonders if the Canucks may part ways with him if they get a call from the Avalanche for a trade. Clearly, they also have Arthur Silovs, who could... I'm not sure we can call him the goalie of the future, but he certainly looks like a really good goaltending prospect. He's done really well, and he's had an opportunity to compete internationally, and I think he's got a bright future. I think at the very least, in the not-too-distant future, he could certainly be a backup to Demko and be a capable backup at that. So I think a guy like Spencer Martin can find himself kind of outnumbered in that situation. So if he can go to a team who he can be a little higher on the depth chart, even if it's only on a temporary basis, that might be good for him. So we'll see. So look for the Avalanche to maybe consider him as well. Now, Dan Vladar in Calgary was another name that we had heard. The asking price, though, might be a little too high. They might be able to get Martin a little bit cheaper. Of course, every dollar for cap space and whatever the asking price they require somebody is all going to play a role here in what they do. But no guarantee that Martin's their guy. But it makes a lot of sense based on what Friedman was saying, that he's somebody they'll seriously consider, and it would kind of make sense for both clubs if that's something we see. Now, the other team I want to talk about is the Sharks, and a couple of their centers, primarily Logan Couture, but you can lump Thomas Hertl into this as well. Of course, training camps are just opened here in the past day or two, so all kinds of media availability for GMs and coaches, which is something you don't usually get, especially general managers. After the season's opens like this, you don't usually hear from them all that frequently, but of course with that we're learning lots of things. And GM Mike Grier of the Sharks was asked about some of their veteran players that are signed longer term, where this team is clearly not going to be super competitive for a while, and going to need to go through a rebuild. If guys like Logan Couture or the same effect Thomas Hertl came to him like Erik Karlsson did, what would the reaction be? Essentially, and Grier gave a good answer. I thought he said essentially those players right now, they're committed to being San Jose Sharks, but if they ever came and asked about being moved like Karlsson did and wanted to get into a more competitive situation, that he would certainly listen and explore and do his best to accommodate. But of course, it has to make sense for the team. Obviously, same thing with Karlsson, right? He made it clear last season, well before the deadline, that yes, I would absolutely entertain trading Erik Karlsson, but it has to make sense, right? He's not going to just give him away. So certainly, the main team that comes to mind is the Boston Bruins. They're the team that when you think of a centerman, a veteran centerman at that, with a good history of being available, that they're going to be one of the teams to watch. Now, of course, like most teams, cap-wise, it's going to be very challenging to do. They're going to need salary to go out. And first of all, we don't even know that this is going to happen. But basically, with Grier now kind of saying the same kind of comments about them that he did Karlsson last year, there's no doubt the team will be open to trading him. The player kind of has to want it because they do have trade protection in their contract as well. So even if the team decided, hey, we'd kind of like to explore this, they need the player's consent for most trades anyway. So clearly, it's something that they would have to be a collaborative group effort. With Boston being one of the main teams to come to mind. Now, as I said before, whether it's these guys or Mark Scheifele or Sean Couturier or Elias Lindholm or any other centers that's been rumored to be available, the Bruins' issue, more than just cap space, is assets that are going to intrigue the other team to make a trade. They need to hang on to some of these prospects that they do have with the hopes of them becoming players, because the team is an older team and it's only going to continue to get older if they don't do that. Obviously, a guy like Couture could still be an effective top 6 center for them for a few years, but he's not young. He's already into his mid-30s or just about. So, clearly if they're going to get an older player like that, they can't be giving away too much in terms of, young players that are the future of the club. So a trade involving either of these guys, which I think, to be honest, that a Couture trade would be more likely than Hertl. He's got less time on his deal. He's a little bit older, which means he's probably going to get frustrated a little bit sooner, where he's going to likely want a chance to win. Right now, Logan Couture is dealing with an injury too, and he at risk to maybe miss the beginning of the season. We don't know yet. So this is nothing that we're going to see very soon. But essentially, it's something that we're going to probably hear about from time to time throughout the season. And if they do decide that they'd like to move on, then we're going to be hearing more and more about it. And teams are likely going to start calling the Sharks after we get through Thanksgiving in Canada and then Thanksgiving in the U.S., like October, November. You start to see, okay, how is this team going to do? Especially by U.S. Thanksgiving, you have a pretty good idea of what most of the teams are. And if it's going to be clear that the Sharks are going to be a bottom 3 to 5 team again this year, then they're probably going to start getting calls saying, hey, what are you thinking here and what are you thinking there, and kind of go from there. And this is probably something to be dragging out for a while, but look for the Bruins to maybe show interest if these guys do make themselves available in the trade market. Now, Steven Stamkos, we talked about him a few days ago because of the remarks that he made when training camp first opened, saying he was disappointed in the lack of talks around a contract extension, and just the way he talked, it just gave you the feeling that, you know what, hey, maybe this could lead into a divorce. Could Stamkos leave the Lightning? Whether that be a trade this year or could it be a free agency move next summer? Either way, it just was interesting that he takes his media availability on the opening day of training camp and kind of drops a bomb, a big boom here to kind of get things very much intriguing and interesting. So Clearly, Julian Breezeball had a chance to respond. And then again today, Jeff Merrick and Elliot Friedman talked a lot about this on the podcast. And they made a lot of great points and a lot of things to consider here. And to be honest, I honestly think right now, I got to say things are trending towards him likely not being a Lightning next year. I mean, I never thought I'd say that, but it makes a lot of sense. So listen to the remarks. The remarks from Julian Breezeball, the GM, said, essentially, he said a lot of great things about Stamkos, how much he is meant to the team, first overall pick, captain, and lots of great things. They've won together. You know, obviously they are very much willing to celebrate that and say how much he's meant to them. But at the same time, then he goes on to say, you know, after that he needs more info to really make a decision on the future and whether or not this is going to work. He said he needs to see how the season plays out. He said that he needs to see, you know, from a cap perspective, like he said, they need to watch their cap dollars extremely carefully and wisely so that in future years they can still compete and remain a competitive cup contender. It kind of made it sound to me like he also talked about the fact that Stamkos, yes, he's aging and he's, you know, 33, going to be 34 next year, but he's still very productive. So essentially, he kind of made it sound to me like he's going to have to take a big discount to stay here because there's just no way that we can afford to pay him what he would get on the open market. So it sounds like they're looking for a big discount to make it work. Stamkos said that there were no talks at all over the summer, but he's willing to listen anytime. Clearly, it's important to him. Now, what Friedman was saying is that he made some really good points. For one, he said he's talked to a lot of people that are close to Stamkos, and the belief is that Stamkos would like to try to play a 20-year career, which means he'd want to play for another 5 years if that's accurate. Okay, so he's probably looking for a 5-year deal, or at least a 4-year deal. At the very least, a 4-year extension, maybe 5. So at least he's not looking for 7-8 years. So this contract, if it's accurate for what he's looking for, would get him to, like, you know, that 39 to 40 range. Okay, so we get that. Now, he also made a good point saying, what has Stamkos done in the past year or so? He's seen the team take Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov, Anthony Cirelli, Mikhail Sergachev, Brandon Hagel, Eric Chernak, and Vasilevsky not long before that, and they all got signed to their long-term lucrative extensions, and they all got it with a full year remaining on their contracts, okay? They didn't have to drag things out down to the wire. They didn't have to go through a whole summer where they're entering their final year wondering, am I, you know, welcome here? Do I have a future here? They were all taken care of a year out. Look at last year at the beginning of the offseason. As soon as July 1st hit, they get a lot of deals done. They get Cirelli done, Sergachev, Chernak. You know, not long before that, within the year before that, they had Point, Kucherov. They just got Hagel done this year. Vasilevsky was done. Like, they didn't have to go right down to the wire. So he's seen all these guys around him getting taken care of, thinking, why not me? I was a first overall draft pick. I've been the team captain for a long time. I played over 1,000 games in this franchise. Got over 1,000 points with this franchise. I won 2 Stanley Cups here. Like, why can you not take care of me? I want to stay here and play out the rest of my career. So I can understand why he is possibly having some frustration and why he might be looking at this and going, like, what the hell's going on here? You know, same thing happened to him on his last contract. Think about before when he would have been like 26, 27 when his last contract was up. Like, look at that now. It was Yzerman negotiating, not Breezeball, but Breezeball obviously was still working with him. That was an AGM. And basically what everybody says is that Yzerman and Breezeball are pretty much cut from the same cloth. It's how they negotiate. Like, Breezeball is considered an absolute killer. Like, he's way more about winning than he is anything else, which is part of his job, which is good in a way. But it makes it hard at the same time. So, like, you know, but Stamkos went right down to the wire and signed just a couple of days before free agency opened. And the offer that he signed from Yzerman was the same offer that Yzerman had made back 3 or 4 months before that. He was offered 8 times 8.5 like around Christmas time. Didn't take it. He wanted more money. Well, when he signed, that's what he got. Yzerman wouldn't budge. So Stamkos probably already feels like he took a little bit of a discount because I think Stamkos could have gotten a little bit more in the open market, which is typically always the case in most of the time. But he didn't do that. He took the deal. Because he really wanted to stay there, and I'm sure he's probably glad he did. But still, it came right down to the wire. He didn't get taken care of ahead of time, and he didn't get as lucrative of a deal as he could. So he might have some unresolved feelings about that. And now here we are again. In the way Breezeball was talking, he doesn't have any intention of negotiating with Stamkos during the season. He said he will see how the year goes and need more information. Basically made it sound like we don't think we can afford him. He's older. We don't know that this is going to work, and we'll see at the end of the year. Now, Friedman had other people close to the team, including some players, say that they get the feeling that the franchise itself wouldn't be all that upset if he left. That they feel like the last time around, they felt like they didn't necessarily need to keep him to win. And now it's the same sort of thing, that they wouldn't be crushed if he left. Which is mind-boggling when you think about it. Now, he has gone through some serious injuries, but he's bounced back like wonderfully. Like the last 2 years have been phenomenal for Stamkos. Well over a point per game. Well over. And like, look how well he's done in the playoffs. On the open market, this guy's going to get heavy money. There's no doubt about it. So, at the end of the day, to me, Stamkos, if he wants to be paid appropriately, he's going to have to probably get it elsewhere. If he wants to, if it's more important to him to be a Lightning and whatever, then he's going to have to take a significant discount, by the sounds of things, to stay in Tampa. There's just no doubt about it. Now, a lot of people think the Lightning are going to take a step back this year. Maybe Brisebois and his staff, maybe they're concerned they're going to do that as well. And if they start to go back, they're going to want more flexibility to make the team stronger. And they think another big contract like a Stamkos deal on the books for next year and beyond might hinder them from doing that. All at the same time, this guy he can play center, he can play on the wing. He's multiple time 30, 40, 50 goal scorer. I don't know. I mean, yes, he's older, and I know the aging curve is a thing, but he doesn't show any signs of slowing down. Now, Jeff Merrick, not Elliot Friedman, had made mention of, well, next year, the Florida Panthers, which is not far away, same state when it comes to like tax laws and all that, they've got a ton of expiring contracts. Looking at their cap friendly, they absolutely do. If you factor in a cap increase by at least $5 million next year. Some think it could be 6 or 7, but 5 probably is reasonable. And then on top of that, the Panthers have a ton of expiring deals. They would have the money to try to woo him over to Florida from Tampa. Now, I'm sure they won't be the only team. Like when he almost left Tampa the other time, the main teams he was negotiating with that were trying to get him were the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Buffalo Sabres. But apparently he wasn't real keen on the Leaf deal. I'm not sure what it was he didn't like about it, but that's part of where he was possibly heading if he didn't stay in Tampa. So it just seems weird, and I can understand why Stamkos is frustrated. And after going through this before, gone through this again, all his teammates are being taken care of, and now here we are. It just seems like the odds of a divorce and him heading somewhere else to finish out his career, not saying it's going to happen for sure, but I think as of today, the odds are pretty good. And whether it be Florida or somewhere else, you have to wonder if the Lightning do take a step back this year, is Steven Stamkos going to be one of the big names we see traded near the deadline? Is Steven Stamkos going to be one of the biggest names, if not the biggest name, or at least, well, one of them, because there's a lot right now, in next year's free agent pool? The 2024 UFA market could be full of big names. There's a lot of guys on expiring deals now. A lot of these guys are probably going to extend. That's the way it goes every year. But it would certainly make things very interesting if he ends up having to depart the Lightning, and we'll see where it goes. If they get to the point where things are not looking good this year, if they do take a step back, I would suspect they'll probably try to get some assets back and trade them so that they don't lose them for nothing next year, considering how they clearly feel about re-signing them. So let me know your thoughts on Stamkos. Is he going to end up traded if they take a step back? Is he going to end up playing somewhere else next year as a UFA, even if he does play out the year in Tampa? Let me know your thoughts on that and all the other news today down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.